One more segment left for this week on Bang the Book Radio. That is our odds report with Brent from DSI Sportsbook. Plenty of sharp involvement out there in both the college football and the NFL betting markets. So here is this week's version of the odds report with Brent from DSI Sportsbook. All right, I'm joined now by Brent for this week's version of the odds report. Brent is a risk manager over at DSI Sportsbook. Brent, how's it going, man?
Everything good down here. We're still stuck with this these little storms that they keep giving names to and stuff like that. But no, everything's going all right. We're we've got hockey going, so obviously I'm happy with that. We got football in full swing. Basketball is right around the corner because hockey's already started, and we're not going to talk baseball today. But no, I think it's good. It's a great time to be in this business.
Speaking of this business, I got a listener question for you here at the top, and then we'll get into all the games where we've got some sharp action. And this is from @T_investments on Twitter. Wants to know, how long does it take a book to label a player a sharp?
I mean, it depends. I mean, honestly, you can nail a guy right away. You just see when he comes in, and then see who the sharp guys who come in right behind him, or right before him, or whatever. So, or at the same time. So, I mean, generally you get a feel for guys like that. And it could be in other cases though, when a guy's playing just his own stuff and he's sharp, he's not part of a group that's coming in and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, you can get almost up to a week or so, and again, sometimes you just got to look at what numbers he's playing, what numbers the closing numbers are, and also kind of just whether it's bad beats and stuff like that, or and generally speaking, how a guy does to the closing number is a big key, because your bigger influences on the closing number is sharp players. So if he's beating other sharp players to the number, that's obviously a good indicator of how sharp a guy is, and that stuff really just takes a week or less, honestly.
Well, and of course, methods have gotten so much better now for watching the action, tracking, the individual player accounts and the stuff that they wind up betting. So, I'm sure it is a process that's much quicker than it used to be. And I don't remember exactly offhand how long you've been in the industry, but is that something that, you have seen a change with here over the last couple of years in terms of isolating the guys you really need to be worried about?
I would say in the last about 5 years, it's by leaps and bounds how much it's changed. I have been in this industry for over 15 years, and we were just it was so labor intensive trying to identify sharp guys. You were going through accounts, picking off, what a guy bet, going over, the Dom Best closing numbers, see what the line was, trying to match up with who bet it. Whereas now, it's just you input certain numbers and it just kind of, the machines do what they do and they pop out. So it's, the math guys really rule this industry now.
All right, we got plenty of games to talk about here, both on the college football and the NFL side, and we'll start with a total. And, of course, for our listeners out there that are following along, make sure you're sorting your odds screen by rotation number, because that's the way that we're going to go here. We'll start with game 117-118. Miami of Ohio takes on Kent State University. We got some sharp action on the total for this one.
Yeah, college football is tough. When you're betting unders, usually there's numbers that are this low. You get weather factors and all that kind of stuff, or injuries, of course, can impact these numbers. But this game with Miami, Ohio, and Kent State, we got sharp money on the under here. The money that we took came on the under 43. I think this number opened at 43.5 at some places, and it's down to 41 right now. There is the question with the Miami, Ohio quarterback who was injured last game, and like I said, when you're talking games with low totals that this low, like around the the low 40s, like a 43 and a 41, and when you guys are going under that, usually it's an injury information where they might have better information than you, or it has something to do with weather. But this is this one I've got. You're not going to get a whole lot of public action involved on a total between these two games. But I do have my usual split in terms of I've got almost twice as many bets favoring the over, yet the line keeps on dropping. That's because of the sharp money that we took under 43.
All right, we'll slide on down here to the ACC game 133-134. Virginia takes on North Carolina. Once again, some totals action in this one.
Yeah, and another total play. Again, I think I've got more sides this week than usual. And people often ask me you got a lot of totals this week, or you got a lot of sides this week, and it's just I don't even dictate the action as it comes in. The sharp guys play what they play. This is another total for you, and also another under here. This one we took sharp action on the under 53.5 with Virginia at North Carolina, and this one's all the way down to 50 right now. So it's dropped quite a bit, 53.5 all the way down to 50, so 3.5, almost a 4-point move. And again, just looking at my chart in terms of my actual number of bets on this one, it just as usual, almost like 2-1 favoring the over, which is generally an indication of the public guys betting the over, which they typically do. But the sharp action that I took was the under 53.5.
We'll move down one spot on the board here. Game 135, 136, Rutgers in Illinois. And this is a game that we talked about on Thursday with Rolf Michaels in terms of the line movement that we've seen on this game. When you see sharp money come in on Rutgers on the road, which is something you generally don't see, that's something that you should take notice of.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It is sharp money that we got on Rutgers. The sharp guys came in on Rutgers +3, -0.5, and it's pretty much 2.5 all the way across the board. Everyone was, yeah, and you're right. I mean, games like this, Rutgers and Illinois, it's generally not your public guys who are firing on games like this. It's usually sharp money that drives numbers off the 3. In this case, we're only down to 2.5, and again, I don't have a ton of public money involved in this game so far, but I do have a wager count, which is kind of surprising me. Like it's almost like 5-1 favoring Illinois, which is just kind of surprising because it's not a typical game where you expect a whole lot of public guys to come in. But Illinois is where the money has come from the public, and sharp money on Rutgers. So that's kind of a good spot for us, even though we did have to bump off the 3. When you've got the public going one way and the sharps going the other way, we'll obviously stand our ground and be rooting for Rutgers with the sharp money and let the public bet Illinois all they want.
So what do you think happens with this game? I mean, do you need sharp involvement to get back up to the 3?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can't see us going back to 3 unless someone else, obviously, there are sharps who will wait till the day of the game to fire the other, on games. And again, it's because you get higher wager limits and such, and maybe they don't want to tip their hand on certain games. But yeah, this is a game as of right now. What it would take to move the other way would definitely be more a sharp bet on Illinois, because right now, every book is different. But for us, we'll definitely dig our feet in the ground and take a stance on Rutgers and side with the sharp money, even if our decision kind of gets way out of hand on Illinois. We'll ride with the sharps and know long term that's a good strategy.
All right, we'll slide down one spot here on the board. Big one in the Big 12 in Morgantown. Texas Tech takes on West Virginia, game 137, 138. This has been a very interesting mover here throughout the week as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I always talk about how, I don't get to pick and choose which games we talk about. I mean, generally we're just going through what the sharp guys have bet. Sometimes we got these games that we talk about that are kind of, doggy on the surface that you don't really want to talk much about. But, yeah, we finally got like a decent game to talk about here with Texas Tech at West Virginia, and sharp money on Texas Tech +5.5 is where that came in. Now, if you look at your board right now, it's pretty much 3.5 right across the board. There's even some 3.5 dog 15s out there. So obviously it's quite a big move. And again, this is another one of those games where almost 5-1 my wager count favoring the home favorite West Virginia. That yet the substantial line move, which again is a typical public and sharp split with the sharp money on Texas Tech, again plus the 5.5, and the public is betting West Virginia -3.5. So again, I mean, anytime you get to sit on the side of the sharps and go against the public, you'll welcome that.
So you see a number open like 6 here, and it gets hit at 5.5, and then winds up going down to 3.5, and of course still sitting 3.5 right now on Thursday. Do you sort of speculate to yourself, in terms of where the number came from? Were they too low on Texas Tech? Were they too high on West Virginia? Do you sort of, kind of play that game within your own mind?
It's, the old expression that you got to break some eggs to make an omelet. You're never going to get the number bang on. And, one of those things you kind of want to, you look at the function of the line, and the function of the line really is not who's, predicting winners, is trying to determine how you're going to balance your books. Like if you could open your number on 5.5 on every single game, and get as much money on Team A as on Team B, you would do that all the time. Now, obviously, it's not quite that easy to do. So you kind of get a feel for games like this, and you say, where, maybe even opening up the number, you thought maybe that Texas Tech was the sharp side, but you thought you might be inundated with public money on West Virginia. Now, a case like this is you did get a ton of West Virginia money, but you got so much more sharp money on Texas Tech. So, I mean, you never know where guys are going to go, but you kind of have a feel sometimes in terms of where the public is going to go. So you may inch a little bit higher on that team, even if you do suspect the sharp money might be the other way.
So for this one to get up to 4, or possibly go through 4, which seems pretty unlikely here at this point, again, we're talking about sharp money that needs to come in, right? Public money is not going to drive this up to 4.
No, it won't.
All right, we'll move down to game 145, 146 here. Tulane takes on Florida International. We got some sharp involvement in this one.
Yeah, Tulane and at Florida International. Tulane, right now we're sitting at 13.5. This one again, it opened up at -11. I did get sharp money on Tulane, so that's why the move all the way up to 11. Again, like I touched on earlier, it's not the best games that we get to talk about all the time, but this game here, again, Tulane is the favorite here, so I do have more bets on Tulane. Again, it's a typical, typically that the public will back the favorite, even though they're on the road. I did get public money on Tulane as well, so I've got public money with Tulane, and I've got the sharp money with Tulane as well. So I mean, we're sitting at 13.5 and haven't really got much back on Florida International at all. You kind of hate to go to 14 after you've opened up at 11 and taking your first sharp bet there, but it looks like that might be what we have to do based on the fact that the public's betting the same way.
All right, we'll slide on down the board here, and this is a game that, we weren't all that sure about early on in the week. TCU taking on Kansas State, game 151-152. Significant quarterback injury for Kansas State here with Jesse Ertz not going to play this week. So the sharp action, not really a big surprise for this one.
Yeah, I mean, the sharp action might have gone that way anyway. Who knows? With TCU is where the sharp money did come. And again, I got the public on the same side as TCU. It was -5 where that sharp action came in, though we're sitting at 6.5 right now. Usually, you look at games like this, and even though you've got public and sharps on the same side, that doesn't necessarily mean, or it almost always doesn't mean, that you've got the money on the same numbers. Obviously, these numbers move quite a bit, especially when the sharps come in. So it was a big jump from the 5 straight to the 6, and then we kind of got dribbles of public money coming in at 6, and even at 6.5 we're still seeing public money. So even though the public and sharps are on the same side on this game, they're not at the same numbers. Again, the sharps were at 5 and the public's been laying the 6 and 6.5 since then.
I mean, given the injury information, why hasn't this thing been moved up to something like 7?
It's all about money, and again, it's kind of like early in the week right now. Right now, in terms of like what we've taken risk wise, it's very one sided in terms of the decision right now. But it's not a ton of volume because again, your sharp guys are coming in with the bigger bets, and they hit you with that one big max bet, and then the public money is kind of dribbled in. So if you ask me if this game will go to 7, I wouldn't be surprised at all based on the way it's gone so far.
All right, move on down the board here. Game 163-164, this one in Conference USA. Charlotte takes on Western Kentucky. We've got sharp involvement on both side and total for this one.
Yeah, again, Charlotte, Western Kentucky, maybe not a barn burner, but I do have sharp money on the 0-6 Charlotte side at +17. We're down to 16 right now. That's on the side. And like you mentioned, I did also take sharp money on the total on the over 46. We're up to 47.5 right now. Your Charlotte's on the road at Western Kentucky. And looking at my count, obviously I don't have a ton of public money involved in this game. They're generally not going to bet a game like this that early. They'll wait till day of game. But my wager count on the over is about 2-1, which you kind of expect the public go the same way. And my count isn't that bad at all in terms of because I've got more wagers on Western Kentucky being the home favorite and the public backing them. But obviously my money's quite one side on the side towards Charlotte. Again, +17 and over 46 as we came in there.
And it's always interesting, to see money coming in on an 0-16. But for those that are out there and those that have been following along, Western Kentucky looks nothing like the Western Kentucky from last year. So we could see a little bit of a market correction on the Hilltoppers here as we go forward throughout the rest of the year. We'll slide down one spot. We'll go out to the Mountain West Conference, game 165-166 on the board. Wyoming taking on Utah State. Sharp action in this game.
Yeah, it seems like we talk about Wyoming one way or another every week, whether it's an underplay on them or the Sharps identifying them as a side. So they seem to be like a team that the Sharps perhaps have identified in the last few weeks, or maybe probably like the last 4 weeks. It seems like they've been on them or on the unders involving Wyoming. This game here, they are actually on Wyoming as the road dog, +3 at Utah State, and pretty much market wide looking at 2.5 right now. So I think that's kind of one of those teams where the public's maybe identified weeks ago or the Sharps identified weeks ago as one to be on. Like I said, they've been betting unders in those games and the side quite a bit. But right now, I've actually got my wager count almost 2-1 favoring Wyoming, so I got some public money on them as well, which may or not be surprised. But +3 where that came in on Wyoming, Adam.
Do you think we see 3 again? I know there are a couple of places out there that do have 3, but do you think at DSI specifically you'll go up to 3?
I mean, it depends on market wide. I mean, right now I do have more money on Wyoming, so I'm sitting at the 2.5 now. I mean, I have seen some threes out there, but like they're three dog minus 120 or three dog minus 115. I'd rather get to the number that I think might work for us as soon as possible. So if I get sharp money on on a dog at 3, I move straight to 2.5, and I think I probably won't have to move off that. Now again, the public money is not going to drive me off the 2.5. It would have to be something sharp the other way, or if I looked at the board, the entire market started going up before I got hit. So I might move on air if it was a dramatic move, but if other books just crept up to 3, I'd still stay at the 2.5 at this point.
Well, we'll stay in the Mountain West here. Game 167-168 between UNLV and Air Force, and this one's been a fairly significant mover throughout the week.
Yeah, it's significant, and that's never a good thing for us. I mean, this game is not terrible in terms of the live movement, in that the sharp money came in on UNLV plus 10, and we're down to 7.5 right now. It's interesting that I do have almost like 5 times as many bets on Air Force. When I talk about my wager count and how many bets, I'm talking about the individual number of wagers we've taken. So almost 5 times as many bets on Air Force, which just kind of surprised me to have that much one-sided action on the game like this. But I do have more money from the sharp action that came in on UNLV at the plus 10.
Do you envision 7 coming here for this one?
No, I don't. I mean, it's moved quite a bit already, and like I said, I do have more public money coming on Air Force. So I mean, I could even see this one creep up to maybe 8.5, and maybe not key numbers, not big numbers you want to worry about at all. And people often say like, what's the big deal moving from 7.5 to 8? And well, if someone's going to buy down to 7, it kind of comes into play there, and you just never know when a game's going to land on a number like 8.
Do you see a lot of people buying points? We actually had a question about that earlier on in the week, and when it makes sense to do that. Is that something you see a fair amount?
We do, more so in the NFL and more so just on and off of key numbers, on and off of the 3 and the 7. We don't see it a ton in college football, but obviously, around 3 we see it, and more so like in bigger games, you'll see them buying, like a game like, say, even like this week, like Florida, Texas A&M. That might be more of a game where someone's going to buy up to the 3 if they're taking the dog, or maybe a case like Tennessee, South Carolina, where they're going to buy it down to 3 and stuff like that. But you more often than not, see guys who buy points. They do make kind of what you might want to call intelligent buys in terms of their buying, like a 3.5 down to a 3, or a 2.5 up to a 3 if they're taking the dog. You don't often see cases where someone's buying, say, like a 3.5 up to 4. You don't see that very often, but buys on and off of key numbers we do see quite a bit, and again more so in NFL.
All right, we'll slide down to game 177-178. Here we'll go out to the Pac-12. UCLA takes on Arizona. This game opened to pick 'em, and we do have some sharp action on the side. But before we get into where that sharp action came in, is this a spot where you kind of throw up pick 'em and say, okay, market, you tell us where to go?
Yeah, actually, that is the case. I mean, and again, it's not a case of us sitting here trying to determine who's going to win this game. We're trying to look at what's the number that I won't have to move off. It's going to balance my action as best as possible. I mean, you could have opened like one on top or something like that and seen if it went back down or what have you. Numbers through a pick, a -1 or +1. You don't worry about those too much. So it was just kind of case like, let's just go pick and see where it goes from there. So, we got hit right away on UCLA. So the voice was quite clear in terms of what the right side was in terms of the sharps. That was UCLA. So UCLA was where the sharp money came on our pick. But it was straight to 1, and we got a little bit more public money on UCLA as well. My count's about 2-1 favoring UCLA, which isn't a huge count. It's a decent Pac-12 matchup here. But the sharp money did come in on pick, and we're sitting at 2 right now.
So if we see a 3, we can reasonably assume that another sharp hit came in on UCLA.
Positively. You could almost take that to the bank.
All right, let's check out another game here on the board, and we'll slide on down to game 193-194. It's a very, very interesting game. I don't know if it's going to get the attention that it deserves, but in the AAC, Navy takes on Memphis. A lot going on with this game. Memphis, a very dynamic offense. Navy, of course, as we know, runs the triple option, so if they can keep Memphis's offense off the field, they could be in a pretty good spot here for this game. We've got some sharp involvement on it as well.
Yeah, we've got sharp action here on this one, Adam, with the dog Navy. I took it that action at plus 4.5 from the sharps. I've got, I'm kind of surprised in that I've got really good two-way action on this game, and my wager count is really quite high. It's like almost like a marquee game in terms of how much action I've taken on this game, which is quite nice for me. I do have a wager count slightly favoring Memphis, which again is good because I did take the sharp money on Navy. Now, if you look at the market, I think this game did open like 5.5 and 5 at some places. My first open was at 4.5, and that's where the sharp action came in on here. So we are down to 3 right now, which again is quite a substantial move. Now we're sitting, like I said, we're sitting down at 3. I can't see us getting off of that unless sharp money came the other way. But sharps were on Navy plus 4.5.
This is, I don't know if you can actually answer this question. I'm just kind of thinking about it now as we're talking here, is that all of a sudden here this week, Navy's in the top 25. And do you feel like you get a larger handle when you're talking about a game that's got a top 25 team in it?
Yeah, I think when people start just hearing more about certain teams, you kind of you just kind of draw your attention to it just automatically. It's just kind of like human nature to do that. You hear if you buy you're thinking of buying a new Mercedes, and all of a sudden you see Mercedes all over the streets that you never saw them before. So you definitely when the attention is brought to a team, you do kind of get more handle on teams like that who kind of pop up and say, hey, wow, I didn't notice them, and then all of a sudden their games kind of get more action. That definitely does happen.
It's funny you bring up that example because I know when I got my car and then when I got my truck that I have now, when we got my wife's car, like immediately you drive that car off the lot and all of a sudden you start noticing like 2 out of every 3 people seem to have the same car.
Yeah, no, it's funny how that it was the same way when you go to the kitchen to find the salt and you can't find the salt. Your mom tells you where the salt is and you're like, it's not there. I can't see it. And she walks in and finds it right away. It's like as soon as you put that out of your mind, you can't find it. And as soon as you put it in your mind, you find it.
All right, let's move on to game 211, 212 here. A little bit of Pac-12 after dark action between Oregon and Stanford. Stanford 10.5-point favorite right now, but it's the total that's drawing some sharp involvement.
Yeah, and again, I've seen a lot of under action on Oregon games this year, and I've seen a lot of under action on Stanford games this year. So it's kind of like just natural, I guess, to see when Oregon is playing at Stanford that we're going to get some under action. That's what we've got. Sharp money came in on this one on the under 61. The initial move from this game was actually we opened at 60. It did kind of get bet up to 61, but again, it was just public betting the over, which again is no surprise. But I mean, you just like I've said in previous shows, you just never know where the sharps are going to go with it. So even though it is public money moving a number, it can move when you get enough bets on it. So I got quite a bit of initial public action on this one going to the over. And again, kind of maybe you have a mindset of Oregon teams of past in terms of how they put up a whole lot of points, but obviously the teams change year after year. And this one is one of those games where I've got the public on the over, which is good for me because the sharp action came on the under 61. And again, just looking like market wide, I've got like a 57 at everywhere across the board. So this one's moved like a full 4 points.
All right, move over to the NFL side here. We got a few games to discuss there, beginning with game 251, 252. The Cleveland Browns take on the Houston Texans. The number's sitting at double digits right now, but the sharp action so far has come in on the total.
Yeah, I mean, the action, the lines this week is kind of strange. I mean, you look at the Houston-Cleveland game, that's like 9.5 or 10 everywhere. You've got New England, who's 9 or 9.5 everywhere. Atlanta's 13. I think Washington's 11. And Denver's like 11.5. I mean, just some monster favorites this week, which is, you say, well, that can't be good for the books. Well, I mean, these numbers are high, and again, our intention is to balance action as best we can, not really predict a winner. And if you take those games with those high spreads, you can look at the end of the week or at the end of the season. Those things generally even out in terms of the numbers functioning quite well. This first game that we talk about with Cleveland at Houston, and I know don't worry, people, I'm not going to try and sell you on why you should be back in the Cleveland Browns this week, sitting at 0-5. But kind of surprising to me maybe is that I've got sharp money on the over, and it's quite dramatic the move. I did not open at 44 where I saw the initial opener. We opened at 44.5, and this one's gone all the way up to 47. So a lot of people buying, I guess, the Houston offense, and obviously they've had some injuries on defense, so that may be a factor as well. That it might come into play in terms of the mentality of people betting this game over. But just betting a Cleveland Brown games over is maybe not something that seems too compelling to me, at least. Well, they have given up quite a few points. Obviously, that might factor into as well. So maybe you're not expecting Cleveland to put up a whole lot of points. Maybe they're expecting Cleveland to give up a whole lot of points. On the side, this line did open at 9.5, and they're like 9.5 everywhere, or kind of like 10, maybe 10.15 out there. I've got more bets on the side of Houston, but not dramatic. So when you put up a double-digit number like this, you kind of naturally do get some dog money, and we do have in this case. The total for me, unfortunately, my wager count is almost like 5-1 with the public joining the sharps and betting the over. So it's quite a big move, I think, in an NFL total to go to 44.5 up to 47 where we are right now.
I wish I would have looked down at the NFL section here for the email that you sent over with the list of games, because we talked about betting points, and I asked the question during college, and I probably should have saved it here for this game. 253-254, New England takes on the New York Jets, and this was an example where we did see a sharp player buying a half point off of a key number.
Yeah, it was almost like I set you up or you set me up for this one with that question. Yeah, this is New England at the Jets. This is for the let's not forget this, for the division lead, perhaps. With the Jets at 3-2, New England at 3-2 as well, and the Jets having won 3 in a row. Here I am selling the Jets to y'all. Jets plus 10.5 minus 115 is where that sharp action came in. And again, like as you mentioned, that was on the buy, so the line was not 10.5 at the time of the play. It was 10. They came up with a half-point buy, and again, because of the juice on the favorite, it was 10.5 minus 115. So it's always a good. Makes you feel a little bit better because you're going to get a one-sided decision in terms of you're going to need the Jets to win the game or at least to cover the spread. And so when you have sharp money backing you the same way, that's always nice. I look at my wager count on this game in terms of the number of bets I've taken. It's about 3-1 favoring New England already, which is quite dramatic. And I think I'd probably see this kind of continue the same way, or maybe even climb to 3.5 or like 4-1 in terms of the actual number of bets I've taken. My money's almost dead even, so I do have a lot of bets on New England, like I said, but the one sharp bet can wipe that away. So like I said, you're talking about a home dog catching 9.5 points, and again the sharp guy came in betting on plus 10.5. So you kind of feel a little bit better when you've got sharp action with you on a home dog like this.
Well, we were talking a little bit on Tuesday's show about the break-even point of buying half points and getting off of some of those key numbers and that type of thing. I would think having 10.5 minus 15 is definitely more than worth it with the line out there at 9 minus 15 right now. Having 1.5 of line value and paying just 5 cents off the traditional juice, that seems like a pretty plus EV move by that sharp guy.
Well, that's what makes the sharp guy sharp, I guess. Yeah, no, I mean, if you look at the board right now and you say, how'd you like to have the Jets plus 10.5 minus 115? I mean, I would definitely take some of that.
All right, well, let's look at a game here where we've seen sharp action on both the side and the total, sliding down one spot here to game 255, 256, Miami and Atlanta. And again, like I said, sharp action both side and total here.
Yeah, this is something that I think people should look out for. It's just kind of be an interesting kind of exercise if someone wanted to do it. Is look at maybe like the closing numbers on teams that come off the bye and how they do all season long. I think just if you just blindly bet teams coming off the bye, if you bet them against the spread, I think you'd probably grind out a little bit of money long term. And this is one of those games where we've got Atlanta coming off the bye last week at home to what has looked like a not very good Dolphins team. Cutler has. I'm surprised with how bad Cutler looks. Honestly, I thought he was going to do all right. I thought he was going to fit in there like easily and do real well there. But that obviously has not been the case at all. We did take sharp action on this one. Unfortunately, it came on the home favorite Atlanta. Came at minus 11 on this one, and we're up to 13 pretty much. Everyone's sitting at 13 or even some 12.5, maybe 13 dog 15. So we're sitting on 13, and you really don't want to budge off 13 when you opened at 11 and took sharp action on 11. But you know that the public is going to be, with Atlanta, obviously, when they're playing such a team that's looked as bad as Miami has as well. Miami's sitting at 2-2, so their record maybe isn't that horrible, but they certainly haven't looked very good. My wager count in terms of the number of bets I've taken is almost 2-1 favoring Atlanta. So again, it's not a huge one-sided wager count. It is one-sided with the public betting Atlanta, of course. But again, as I mentioned with the previous example with the Jets in Cleveland and stuff like that, when you get up big numbers like that, you have a better chance of attracting dog action because people say, well, that's just too many points. But I do have sharp action, like I said, on this one on Atlanta and also on the under in this one. I've got under 47.5 is where sharp action came in. We're sitting at 46 right now. There are some 46.5s out there right now, and I've got actually wager count of almost like 2-1 favoring the under as well. So I've got a little bit more public action than you might expect on under this one. But Atlanta -11 and the under 47.5 is where the sharps came in on this.
Well, and for our astute listeners out there, and that's all of you because you're listening to this show, when you see a favorite of this magnitude getting bet up and the total being bet down, I think it's pretty clear what the expectation is here in this game, and that would be that Miami continues what they've been doing in terms of not moving the football.
Yeah, it's kind of like, why would you expect them to do anything else?
All right, we've got a big-time game here in the 4 o'clock time slot. There's actually a couple really good games here in this 4 o'clock time slot, the Rams and Jacksonville being one of them. But the one that's got sharp action here, both side and total, is game 269-270, Pittsburgh and Kansas City. This will probably, I would say, wind up being the most heavily bet game of Sunday, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you take out the day games and take away the night games, for sure, this is probably going to be that game. Yeah, and again, we always get a lot of action on Pittsburgh, and since the start of since last season, about halfway through last season, we've got a ton of money on Kansas City. I think in terms of looking at games that are going to be heavily bet, I think probably the next closest game to compare right now would be the Green Bay Minnesota game. That's on paper that's a really good matchup. Even though the QB situation with Minnesota. This is going to be one of those heavily bet games, and right now I've got. My money's not horribly one-sided. My count is about three times favoring Kansas City. My money's about 2 times favoring Kansas City, so it's not quite dramatic. And whenever I've got like a wager count of over 3 to 1 favoring one side of my money, maybe half of that, it's usually sharp money that came the other way, and that it was a situation with this game that I do have sharp money on Pittsburgh. That it did come at 4.5. Now, you've seen this line kind of bump from 4.5 down to 4, back up to 4.5, and back to 4. It's kind of going back and forth, and that I do have quite a bit of public money on Kansas City. I don't have any sharp money to speak of on them, but it just seems like one of those games where the public is just going against Pittsburgh. Roethlisberger was vocalizing his frustration and saying that maybe he just doesn't have it anymore. But the total is another play here that the sharp money came in on, and that was the over 46.5. I expect this line to move a little bit more. We've gone from 46.5 to 47, but just generally speaking, the public likes to bet Steelers games over, and they like to bet the Kansas City games over all season long, pretty much. So my wager count on the over is about 2-1 right now. So I think that's probably going to drive this number up a little bit. If you look, come game day, if this game like 47 goes to 47.5 or 48, then you see it drop back down to 46.5 or 47. It's probably going to be sharp money the other way that drives it, but I see a continuing trend in terms of the way the public is going with the over, and the sharps, the early sharp action that came on the over 46. So I think this number is probably going to just bounce back and forth between the 4.5 and the 4, but the sharp money did come on in Pittsburgh, and like I said, the over 46.5.
One more question here for Brent, or one more question for you here, Brent, I should say. You don't have anything about this team on the card because they're on a bye week. That's the Dallas Cowboys. News coming across the wire here as we're recording that Ezekiel Elliott's 6-game suspension has been upheld by the appeals court. Of course, the Cowboys can file another appeal, and maybe Ezekiel Elliott's suspension does get pushed back again. But from a line value standpoint here, what is a guy like Ezekiel Elliott worth to the Cowboys number for next week?
Yeah, I mean, he's usually you don't throw around a number like 3 on someone who's not a quarterback. Usually quarterbacks, you throw 3s around with, like say maybe like Carr this weekend. Look, the Carr is and Oakland with the drop down from EJ Manuel to him now. Again with Dallas, I mean, it's one of those things where you're not only looking at the guy who's going out, but you're looking at the guys who replace him. Like who's the replacement? How much is the drop down? Now the drop down from Elliott to Alfred Morris, is it a huge drop? I mean, yeah, but it's not like, Alfred Morris probably isn't chopped liver. He had a couple of good years with Washington, and he could fit, not right in, in Phil Zeke's shoes. But, I'm thinking that Elliott's not going to be like a 3. A quarterback would definitely do that, again, depending on how big the drop is. But I think he's probably like 1.5, 2 points to the number for sure. And again, it's a question, too, of what surrounds them. I think Dallas has got enough, weapons all around them in terms of the quarterback being good, the receivers being good. They got a good line, a good tight end. I mean, their offensive line has been, so good for the last couple of years, so that's always a big factor in things like that as well.
It's just always interesting to check that out and see what some of the skill position guys are worth, because we know quarterbacks are obviously worth a significant amount, but sometimes the skill position guys, it can be a little bit tougher to figure out. But Brent from DSI Sportsbook, thank you so much, man. A lot of great analysis here today, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Awesome, Adam. Thanks for the show, and have a great weekend.